Hello, everybody. A very good evening to all of you. Thank you for joining the webinar on Know Your Rivers. I am Purnima Agarkar. I'm a conscious citizen of the city and a volunteer working towards the betterment of our rivers. And this webinar series is an initiative by Pune River Revival. So Pune River Revival, or PRR is what we call it, is primarily an initiative by Jeevit Nadi, Living River Foundation. But this movement, it's a citizens movement where all the citizens of Pune, they want to revive and rejuvenate the rivers as free flowing clean rivers. So this webinar series we launched just last month on the occasion of World Rivers Day, and we plan to have a webinar every month where we come up with one theme that will connect us with the rivers. And this time, the theme is about knowing the life on our rivers, and through interesting ground stories by our experts. Today, we have three experts and one moderator. Our moderator today is Shubha Kulkarni. She is just a brief background about her. She is a MS in Retail and Consumer Sciences from US and an MBA from Mumbai University. She has worked in the retail industry and owns a business of organic and natural produce. After completing her diploma course from Ecological Society, she has been working with NGOs related to all environmental activities. She has been a project coordinator at Jivit Nadi since 2017. So I welcome her and I hand it over to her to introduce the speakers and then start the panel discussion. Just a few instructions before that. Everyone, please post your questions in the Q&A section. And if you have any feedback, you can also post it in the chat box. So over to you, Shubha.
Thank you, Purnima, and a very, very good evening to everyone who's present. First and foremost, I would like to thank you for choosing this option of spending your Thursday evening with us, vis-a-vis the different options that you have, including the World Cup match. We hope that we can engage and entertain you as much, if not more, through this series, as Purnima just said, of Know Your Rivers. I have been working with Jivit Nadi, and the way I have associated myself more actively was taking up the Adopt a Stretch initiative. We, a group of friends, adopted a stretch of river close to where I stay, and this was 6 years back. And I think after that, there's been a transition for me, and that's a transition from moving as an ignorant, unaware layman person. Who probably used to just get excited with dogs, cats, and probably a parrot, to getting to know so many other species that exist, especially in a riverbank. And this was a world that I really was not aware of at least 6 years back. So thank you, Jivit Nadi, for giving me this opportunity. And I think all of us volunteers have had this transition being associated with Adopt a Stretch activity. Purnima, if you could just share a small, 2-3 photographs that I have about the stretch, which will just give an idea of the kind of flora and fauna that's there.
Yes. Just give me a moment, I'll share.
So this is a pristine ecosystem seen in the middle of the city. It's on the Barner Aund Link Road. And if you see, can you see? Purnima, are you able to see the screen? Okay, I think we'll go ahead. If we are able to have the photos,
No,
we'll
wait.
add to it.
Yeah, I was just making it full screen. My PC got hanged. But
No,
go
no,
ahead.
it's okay. So the stretch basically enters with this huge, fig tree with a woody liana, that's a woody creeper, which is circling around it. Yeah, so that's how the stretch. That's the first scene that you see as you enter the stretch. So it's a beautiful, pristine. No one would imagine that this is right in the middle of Pune city. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Uh, in the next slide, there is Crinum viviparum, which is actually a water lily on the left, and it's unlike other water lilies. This is a species which is found only in extremely clear and clean waters. So this is a photo that we've taken 2 days back. It we it's like it's a prestige. If we are able to see it, then we know the water quality at the stretch is good. The one on the right side is a Asian common toad. Now, this fellow was stuck to one of the plastic bags when we were cleaning on one Sunday, and he wouldn't move. So I really thought he was dead. So I kept looking at him for 1 minute, and then suddenly he jumped out. He has a very thick skin, but again, a species which I had never seen, and it's seen at our stretch. The next slide. Um, This on the left side is something called daddy long legs. Again, an accidental sighting. They are not spiders, but species very similar to spiders. What you're seeing is basically, a manhole of a sewage pipeline which is defunct, which is in a stretch, and they have a defense mechanism. So as you go close to them, they all start dancing. Now, I would have at least seen 200 of them at one time, and they all started dancing together. On the right side, the last one is a wasp nest. Again, something very unique. I had never seen before. We know of a honeycomb, but this is a wasp nest, and ideally, it probably should have been found on a treetop, but here it's lying on the river stretch. Yeah, so I just, with these photographs, I just would like to bring to light that the kind of life that's there on a riparian zone, which is the zone bank of the river, is phenomenal. And I have been exposed to it just because of the connect that we have been able to do through the Adopter Stretch initiative. And today's webinar, we have an esteemed group of people who are all working on the field. First on the list will be Dr. Satish Pandey. He's an Indian medical doctor, conservationist, and researcher. He's a eminent TEDx talker. You can look up his videos on the YouTube. He's an interventional radiologist at KEM Hospital, founder of ELA Foundation, which works on nature education and conservation. He's a fellow of Maharashtra Academy of Science and Linnean Society of London, and has published numerous studies on birds. I welcome Dr. Pandey
Thank you.
at the webinar today. And I would just like to mention that Doctor will have to leave a little early because he offers a prior appointment. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put it on the chat and he'll try to address it before he leaves. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Oh, should I start?
Yes, sir, please.
Oh, hello. Thank you. First of all, hello, Pankaj. How are you? Hello, Monali. Thank you very much for asking me to join. And I'm really sorry because I've been abroad for the last whole week and being very busy with the hospital work and still coping up with it. It was, a matter of great concern and very, very important subject to talk about rivers in general and rivers of Pune in particular. Rivers have always been a source around which civilizations have established themselves over a period of eons. So what has happened now is if you have a global perspective, and I always feel that if we have a global perspective first, then we really appreciate the local perspectives in a much better manner. Therefore, if we look at the rivers around the world, you start with, suppose, the Nile River in Egypt, and that is where the Egyptian culture all started. And the very important papyruses which were there have been the source for writing paper, wherein the literature, thoughts of human beings could be actually written on them, because from papyrus we had all the ancient paper. Now that is where we had a very important bird which was living in Egypt, and which has been, idolized in the Egyptian culture, and that is the ibis. So that is the a very sacred ibis that we call. So after death, the ibis decides whether you have done good or bad, and you go to heaven or hell. So that is where the river comes in. The second important river has been the Tigris and the Euphrates, which has been the home to Assyrian and Sumerian cultures. So, wherein around those rivers have been one of the most important birds in the world, and some of them have been the great spotted eagles. Now today the great spotted eagle is extremely endangered. Very few of them seen, because they are the birds which prefer the marshy areas. If you move on further and you come to, say, India, you have the Gangetic and the Yamuna uh, floodplains. Now, Ganga and Yamuna have been always associated with animals in the past, because the vehicle of Ganga has been the crocodile, and the vehicle of Yamuna has been the tortoise. And here on these floodplains, if you look at the archaeozoological remains, that is the remains of garbage dumps, wherein the archaeologists go and find out what has been eaten by human beings and discarded in those garbage dumps, you will be surprised to know that the white-headed duck, which is one of the rarest ducks today, has been eaten by the ancient Indians for a very long time in a very big way. So those are the kinds of remains that you see around these floodplains. And then you move on to the Yangtze River in China, where you see, those the very very fabulous Mandarin duck. And then further east you go is the Mekong Delta, where you have that the great ibis in Cambodia, which is another endangered bird. So the point here that I would like to show is rivers have been always associated with cultures and flora and fauna. Narmada River has got a whole a hymn. There is a Narmada Stotra where you have a whole stanza dedicated to birds. I remember a line ki Sumatsya Chakra Nakra Sumatsya Kacha Nakra Chakra Chakra Vaka Sharmade Tvadiya Pada Pankajam Namami Devi Narmade. So here on the Narmada River you have got Sumatsya, that is the fish, Kacha is the tortoise, Nakra Chakra is the crocodile, Chakravaka is the Brahmini duck, Sharmade, that is it gives shelter to all these things, all these animals. And Vadiya Pada Pankajam. So, in such holy lotus feet, O Narmada Mother, I bow to you. So that is the kind of attitude that our elders had, our ancestors had towards flowing rivers. There have been this concept of Saptamatrukas, where 7 goddesses were associated with the river and the brother, the elder brother, and it was said that abluting, urinating and defecating in the rivers was supposed to be condemned. You had to look at rivers as a mother. You cannot afford to pollute it. Today, when you come back to Pune, I am so, sad when I see that apart from 1 or 2 months of monsoon, the river does not flow, because there's not a single drop of water which comes out from the Khadakwasla Dam or from the Mulshi Dam. And all that flowing water that you see in the river is gutter. So all these gutters and hardly any effluent treatment protocols, because the amount of sewage that is generated is so much that the present machinery is simply inadequate. So in the past, we have been, you look at a beautiful book called British Birds. There are about 40 types of microhabitats that they are associated with wetlands. And those kinds of habitats are well known. So we have the mud flats, where we have the plovers, we have the sandbars, where we have the storks, then we have got the reed beds, where we have got the great reed warblers, which is going on. There are the islands on which even now you go to Ujni river and the backwaters, and there are islands there on the Ujni river, where for the past several years, the rare birds like which were not, until recently breeding in India, but the black-winged stilts are breeding there. The Kentish plovers are breeding there. The Then on the trees, there are the spoonbills which keep on breeding. The pratincoles breed, the little terns breed. There was a time I have seen myself, the black-bellied tern, which is one of the most endangered species today. It was breeding in the islands of this Ujni Dam, So another point I would like to make here is the very important island called the Shaha Island, which is very close to in the backwaters of Ujni, just after you go from Indapur. And on that island, there have been thousands of nests of these ground nesting birds. And when we went there, we saw that the island, which was about 50 meters from the bank, was actually with the help of JCBs and other things, it was connected purposefully with the bank, and the sand on that island was getting, harvested by people. And when I went to the irrigation department and complained about all these things, and the engineer said that, well, there is no such activity going on. And after my complaint, the thing stopped for that particular season. But now I went back again; it's still there. So that is the kind of sensitivity that we have towards our rivers. We don't care a damn that the trucks which are going on the island are actually trampling the eggs and nests of birds, and the live chicks are getting crushed. And once heart breaks, I try to do things on my part, but the entire machinery needs to be really awake. So what is important in what I would like to say importantly here is initiatives like what you have taken just now, like the Jivit Nadi initiative just now, is very important, because through these initiatives, stories like this can come out and they can reach out to people. And only then we can have people support, the support of the administration, the support of the revenue department, the support of the agricultural department, the support of the irrigation department, because these are all stakeholders in these things. So that these are the kinds of things. Today, sadly, what I feel is we have got an entire new set of habitats which is coming in. That is what I feel. Like we have got the foam beds which were never there in the rivers. What are these foam beds? These foam beds are just churning of the chemicals and all these detergents which get into the river. And you have seen mountains of foam. You go to Kavdi and you go to any other Kolhapur type Bandhara, and you'll see those foam beds. And on those foam beds, the birds are trying to go through them and other things. There's other new habitat called the garbage dumps. They're everywhere in the river. There are other new habitats called the plastic mini islands. That is what I call them. The plastic bags, the plastic bottles, and several other thermocol items. They all clump together and they form these plastic mini islands. Then you have got this other new thing called the cloth clumps, the decaying cloth. The decaying the beds. What our people look at rivers is not as a habitat, not as a living river, but they think that it is the best place to dump our nirmalya. It is one of the best place to dump the the things of the deceased on the 13th day, 12व्या दिवशी, 13व्या दिवशी, जो आपला प्रेमातला माणूस गेला आहे, त्याच्या ज्या सगळ्या गोष्टी आहेत, त्याचे कपडे असतील, त्याची कॉट असेल, त्याची गादी असेल, त्याची खुर्ची असेल, त्याचे कपडे असतील, तर ते सगळे ते नदीमध्ये टाकून देतात. So those are the kinds of things which go there in the river, and they form these new kinds of habitats, which I call them the cloth clumps. Then the idol remains, huge idols once upon a time were being dumped in the rivers, and the remains of those hand, with a wooden thing coming in and the hand broken. And there have been so much of articles on them in the newspapers. And fortunately, on this particular ground, I must congratulate the municipality, the Pune Municipal Corporation especially, because they have taken a very good step in these directions, positive steps, because these islands, these idols are very rarely dumped into the rivers nowadays. So that is one of the good things which has happened. Other things are called these hyacinth floats. Water hyacinth is another great threat. And every time you have to remove the hyacinth, the time, we all know that the time is before they flower, because unless you remove them. I came across a very beautiful initiative by, you must be certainly aware about it, is about Mr. Mike Pandey, who has been doing a lot of work on creating the bags and other items for daily use from the fibers which are drawn from the hyacinth. So those kinds of initiatives can certainly be incorporated in Pune, and I think Jivit Nadi may certainly be the office bearers must be aware of these things, because hyacinth has a very nice water resistant property. And the bags which are made from the fibers of the hyacinth can be made by the local people, and that can, keep on subsisting them. And that is something where you can tackle the problem of water hyacinth. The other important new habitat is this called the rotting furniture posts. So all these beds and other things which are dumped in the river, they stand up, and on those posts you see stalks sitting, the egret sitting, and so on. So those are the kinds of things. So it is really very, very annoying. Now, when we look at Pune rivers in a geographical perspective, the rivers start from the Western Ghats on the west side of Pune, and they are, all of them are east flowing rivers. So when they are going through the Western Ghats, they are all surrounded by forested areas. So that is where you get all of these forest birds. So that is one of the very important places, because even those forests are being cut, they are under threat. But many of the forests which are there, which are owned by the forest department, there are several rivers by the sides of which the properties are owned by private corporate companies, such as the Tata Power Company, which conserve these habitats very meticulously. Now, unless we conserve these forested areas around the rivers, the perennial flow of the rivers will not be maintained. So that is another important place where there are all these forested birds, and one of the important birds that we see there is the brown wood owl. Now, very, very common, the brown fish owl, another denizen which is seen in the forested tracts of the Western Ghats. Then as the river comes towards the eastern side, there are a few rapids on that. Now, when we say rapids, we don't have really, there are different kinds of amphibians which are there in the rapids in the Western Ghats. But if you look at the rapids in the Himalayas, well, we have got an entirely different set of birds which we can see there. And those are the fork tails, and then there is um, the merganser, so the dipper, so these are the birds which are there. They like rapids, and in these rapids, even in the Western Ghats, oxygenation of the water is very high, and that is because the water keeps on churning, and therefore downstream you have got a very beautiful bird life. And on the banks of Mulshi River, Mulamutha River, I have seen very recently birds like skimmers, going on the backwaters. Recently, there was also a very interesting sighting of a skimmer on the Kaudi part river. So I was really surprised. So it was on transition, so in transit. Then other things are like when uh, there are these dams and bunds and the bandharas and the Kolhapur type weirs, which are all there on the entire river. And then the water becomes stagnated. It becomes polluted because most of the water that we have in the rivers is all polluted water. I remember 30 years back, just going along the Lakdi area, there were thousands of black-winged stilts, thousands, you will believe me or not. Just underneath the Lakdi pool, hundreds of chakrawak, the Brahmini ducks. There were the bar-headed geese which were seen along the banks of the river. There were the garganis. There were the pintails. There were the visions. All these birds used to be seen there at the Bund Garden, just under the bridge. Today, I go there, hardly see any of these birds. Today, what we see is over a period of time, because these birds have been ingesting all these polluted waters, it has definitely and negatively affected the breeding cycle of the birds. Today, in the recent report of the India birds, we are all aware of that. There's a 60% decline, which is a very alarming decline of the number of birds in the country. And the what comes to my mind is the book Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, where she has written that man will only realize things are going bad when there will be there when no birds sing. So that is the point where we are heading. So I think these are the kinds of things. Then in the winter, even now, it is still not late. Even now on the banks of Bhima, the Ujni Dam, the Indapur area, Bhigwan area, and anywhere along from Pune right up to there, in the Pune district. Then there is the Nira River, which goes through the Purandar Taluka. Then there are several of these MI tanks where we still have the peregrine falcon being sighted regularly. I have seen, you will be on the Garade Dam, a rare sighting of the black neck stork, one of the very rare birds, and I have a photograph. Then we regularly see the black storks, we see the white storks, We see even now the great spotted eagle. We even now see imperial eagle once in a while. So all is not lost. So it is really time that we have to look at these things very seriously. Things are, the most important thing I would like to say is to, try to make these effluent plants, treatment plants more efficient, more in number. And unless we pour clean water in the rivers, things are not going to change. Just altering the habitats on the periphery of the river banks is important. But what about the poison? What about the insecticide? What about the pesticides, the detergents, the chemicals, industrial grey water that we are pushing into the river? So that is the question. That is the most important part that I think we should try to address. And then on the islands, we still have the nesting of the pratin coals. We still have the nesting of the pented snipes. We still have the nesting of the large pied wagtails. So many birds we can say, we can list. The blue throat very regularly comes on all the banks of the river. So they are there. They are giving us joy. There are so many bird watchers. We are running the ornithology course for the last 20 years, and we're talking about birds as bioindicators. We are talking about birds as doing several kinds of services. But the most important thing now for the last, I think 15 years, what we are also trying to do from ILA Foundation is to try to target the stakeholders from the government. And these stakeholders are the forest department, the irrigation department, and the revenue department. Unless these departments really put in and pitch in, things are not going to change. The things are way beyond what the NGOs can do. But the NGOs can join hands with these government agencies, have meetings with them. And I'm very, very sure that things can go even now in the right way. Global warming is already there. We already see climate change, fallouts. We see that the leaves are falling at one of the most, wrong times. No fruits when the birds are coming in, the migratory birds are coming in. All these things are there. We all know the rain this time, except in the Pune area, you just go a little bit to the east of Pune and you have a great drought-like situation. The things are really bad. So I think this is, in very brief, I would like to talk about these my views, because you can keep on talking for days together, but what is more important is what we can do. So very briefly, what I thought I would cover is that the global perspectives about the rivers, importance of rivers, rivers as deities, geographical perspectives of the river, bioclimatic perspectives of rivers, habitats which the rivers offer, and what are the various habitat-specific birds that we see in the various rivers. So I think with that, I would like to stop here. And again, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to be with such a distinguished, uh, you know, group of people. And if there are any questions, if I am able to answer them, I will be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Yeah, since you're in a hurry, I'll just ask the questions directly to you. First
Yes.
question is, can you please tell us something more about Sapta Matruka?
Sapta Matruka. Sapta Matruka is a concept which is very deeply imbibed in the Indian culture. So this is a concept of seven devis or the yoginis, which are associated with the flowing water or any kind of water. And the point here is that anywhere there is an important water body, and water body is the place around which, as I said earlier, the entire culture of humanity has started, thrived, and flourished. You know of the Saraswati River, where there was a big culture along the Saraswati River. I did not mention the Sindhu River, the Indus River, around which there was the Harappan and the Mohenjo-daro cultures. Now, the Saraswati River, just vanished. It disappeared. We still have the route from where the Saraswati used to flow. And along the banks of that Saraswati River, there was once upon a time what is now the desert of Rajasthan. There was a wet evergreen forest up to 10,000 years before period. And in that forest, there used to be rhinos, which were dwelling, and we have the evidence. There have been evidences of ostriches in Murgao. So all these things we know. So once a river dries up, the entire culture, the entire flora, fauna, biodiversity just vanishes. So what our ancestors had realized is you have to give the highest respect to a river, to the water. So apa is water. The word aqua also comes from ap. So this water is the highest venerated object. That is why we also have Ganga flowing through the Jata Sambhar of Lord Shiva. And when something comes from the Jatas of Lord Shiva, it has to be venerated. So, in order to attract public attention, these Sapta Matruka is mothers. So, these 7 mothers were installed. There were 7 idols side by side, along with the big brother with the side. So, there were these 8 idols. And wherever there is a Sapta Matruka, you are not allowed to pollute that water. You're not allowed to wash your clothes. You're not allowed to urinate, not allowed to defecate, not allowed to divert that water source. So many things have been given. It has been seen in the Indian culture. Similar things have been seen in the Buddhist culture. So these are beautiful things. You simply, it moves your heart. How much thought our ancestors must have given to these things. When the Ganga has got a vehicle of crocodile and Yamuna has a vehicle of tortoise, what more do you want to have? Sometimes you have a gangetic dolphin also. In some texts that it is also known as a vehicle of this Narmada. Mata Narmada. You don't call it Narmada. You go to Madhya Pradesh, they say Mata Narmada. They don't say Narmada. Ganga Maya. Yamuna Ji. Brahmaputra. It's not Brahmaputra. It's Brahmaputra because it's a Nad. It's a huge river. Crossing a Brahmaputra is, it takes such a long time. You can't see the other bank. That is how we venerate these rivers. Godavari. So there is a, Krishna Mata, Krishna Maya. So there are songs, there are hymns, there are poems. So, Dr. Suruchi Pandey, who is my wife, she is the head of the Neelkantha Joshi Lab of Ethno-Ornithology. So we are working a lot on the, ethnobiology and ornithology and all those things. We have written books on these issues. Recently, we published a book with the Tata Power Company, and that is on Matsya Vinod, the art of angling. That might be something which might be of interest to you, the Jivit Nadi, people, because that is a very recent book that we published, and that is on the art of angling in ancient India, based on a text called Manasollas, which was written 1,000 years back. And it is a book with about 120 pages. There are 90 shlokas, and for each shloka, we have drawn a special illustration by Sachin Joshi, and each shloka is explained, and there is a critical comment on that. And based on river, so how important the rivers are. Thank you for asking me this question. I like to talk, and we can keep on going around as far as the culture is concerned. Okay, I hope I have answered your question.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. And I think in this short span, you gave a very nice overview of the changing landscapes, history, issues, and most importantly, also how monitoring, as individuals, as citizens, we can do and which is required. So thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Thank you.
I know you're
Thank you.
busy, but thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
We'll now go to our next panelist, Miss Monali Shah. She's one of the founders of JN herself, a person with many hats. Monali is basically an architect and an ecological consultant. She has her MSc in biodiversity, monitoring and utilization, completed courses in field botany, ornithology, and also, as I told you, she's an architect. She does biodiversity assessment and also landscape designing. She has been awarded the Go Green Award by Road Tract from Kolhapur and also won awards for her films on nature conservation. She has also been doing the biodiversity seasonal assessment for Jivit Nadi since 4 5 years. And I now call upon Monali to give us an overview of the Pune landscape more in detail and a little more about the riparian zone. Over to you, Monali.
Yeah, thank you, Shobha. So I will be talking about the stretch on which I'm working from last so many years. So actually, I came to Pune in 2010, and when I came, I saw that Mula River is flowing nearby my house. So it's just 5 minutes away from my house. So I used to go there for bird watching. I like to do the bird watching, and I regularly go there for bird watching. And I saw that there is a very beautiful forest along both banks of the river, but I never found a way to go there. So there is a pathway, but I feel scary because the forest was so dense. And then in 1970, with the Jivit Nadi, we entered that forest, and it's so beautiful forest. So I want to talk about that stretch. It's just a 500-meter stretch, but it's a really valuable stretch, a very good stretch in terms of biodiversity. So I want to talk about what I have seen in this stretch, and what are different habitats by which I'm observing different, especially I watch birds and butterflies and flora species. So I will talk on that. Can you share my presentation, Purnima? So when I entered in that forest on the bank of Pune River, so I was so fascinated. It's a so dense forest, evergreen forest, and full of closed canopy. It's a closed canopy forest. So if you go there, even in the month of summer season or in the month of May, you won't find the sun rays reaching at the floor. So dense forest it is, and the temperature outside that forest and temperature in the forest, there is about 4 to 5 degree difference in the temperature. So that kind of forest is there on the Mula bank, and still that forest is existing. So we can't believe that such a good forest is there on the Mula bank. And some of the species which are particular to that forest. So, so you can see the photo below. This is the type of forest. So it's evergreen. It remains green throughout the year, and the moisture level is very high in this forest, being it is at the river bank. And the main species which we found, and which are typical riparian species. So the species which exist on the river bank are called as a riparian species. So the walloons is one of the species. It's a very important species because it you will find it only on the river bank or the stream bank. They cannot grow anywhere, any other habitat. So they require the river banks or the water flow. So there are many walloon trees, so big walloon trees. So I have seen one walloon tree about 60 feet high and about 3 meter circumference, GBH. So such a species are existing there. Then there is a lot of ficus. So ficus which comes on the river bank, ficus heterophylla and ficus hispida. These both species. So kara umber and regular umber also. So huge trees. You can see these roots of these trees. So there are huge trees. These are present on that bank. And then linas, Shobha have mentioned, you can see the lina, it's like a zopara. So these are big linas, woody climbers, and which reach up to canopy level. And there are many linas on that in that stretch. So this stretch is full of diversity in terms of flora. Crinum lily, Shobha has shown you this lily which grows only in the fresh water. Then Panajambul, this is also a different species which you see only on the bank of river. So this is such a good habitat, and the moisture level is very high. So the wetness is there, and the temperature is very less in that area. And also, next slide. And also, if you see the course of the river, So there are some wetlands are formed. So many wetlands have formed. So wetlands are the shallow water bodies where the water remains throughout the year. So our rivers are not perennial, so they dry out in the summer season, but these wetlands remain green. And at the backside of this wetland, you can see a thick forest. So such a forest is still existing on Mula Bank, and this is the wetland, and also the rocky outcrops. So these rocks, they come out of the river channel, and they are very important habitat, especially for birds. So there are various rocky outcrops, and we have seen a lot of birds, migratory birds, uh, sitting on these outcrops, especially they are roosting on these outcrops. So these are the important habitats which are still present in the Mula River. And then about the birds, so I'm documenting the birds since 2012, and especially in last 5 years, I'm documenting properly. So I have documented around 107 species only in the 500-meter stretch. So we are regularly going on in that stretch and documenting the birds, butterflies, and flora. And only in the 500 stretch, we have documented 107 species, such a rich area that is. So why we are seeing so much of species? So we see aquatic birds also, we see forest birds also. So this is because various habitat are there along the river. So what are these habitats? So I have made a sketch or a section of the river, and I will try to explain how different habitats are created due to in the river. So this is the river section, and the center part is the river channel where river flows, and this it has deep river, so the depth is there, and the side parts are somewhat like flat, and the upper blue part is the flood. So whenever flood comes, the water spreads, and the both flat sides along the river bank are the flood plains, and these flood plains are very, very, very important and very productive habitats. So in the river channel itself, we used to see a lot of ducks. So ducks, migratory ducks also, and the local ducks, so resident ducks. So various migratory ducks come from Europe, from Ladakh, from Mongolia, so northern part of the world. So they come here in the winter season. Then we have the species like river tern. So in 2012, I have seen about the thousands of river tern which are migrating through the river channel. So they are flying over the river channel. So I seen on one day when I went, second day I went, third day, they are continuously going. The flock of the river tern are going through that river channel. So thousands of river terns I have seen there. And one more bird, kingfishers, which are dependent on this river channel. So fishes on this river channel. Three type of kingfishers we see there. So one of the important kingfisher is a pied kingfisher, which require fresh and clear water for the fishing. So these are some birds which we see in the river channel. Then the flood plains. The flood plains, they are like mud flats or the sandbars where चिखल असतो तिथे. So it is a muddy area, and it is a very productive area in terms of the insects. So many insects, invertebrates, they breed there, and therefore a lot of birds, so especially waders, they feed on that insects. So different type of waders, they used to come in the winter season, or some waders we see throughout the year. So these mud flats are the habitat for these waders. And also these shallow areas, so we have a tree cover in the shallow areas, and tree leaves are drooping down on the river bank. So these areas are breeding sites for different ducks. So common coot, then this little creek, and we have seen the breeding of them, and spot-billed duck. So they breed along this river channel. And then the trees along the river bank, they they are the perching sites for bigger birds like storks, herons, egrets. So they sit on these trees, and they find for the fishes in the river bank, and they also use these mud flats for the fishing purpose. And then there is a very good forest on the both sides of the river bank. So we see a lot of forest birds. And one more thing, the river floor, so the forest floor, it is a full of leaf litter, as it is a good quality of forest. So it is a full of leaf litter. And at the leaf litter, we find certain birds like flycatchers. And this bird is a peculiar bird. It's very rare to see. So this is a forest wagtail, which we seen once in this stretch. And this habitat is changing over a period of time. So from last 5 to 6 years, it is changed drastically. And as Pandey sir told that these birds are bioindicators. So previously, I have seen all these birds in large numbers, but now what we see are the crows, then pond herons, and kites. They are seen in the large numbers. So they indicate that there is a disturbance in habitat, and habitat is not good. So these birds, the variety of birds, they are replacing by these generalist birds. So this is all about the birds. And then I will talk about some butterflies. So next slide. So butterflies are always plant specific. So they require a plant, any host plant that is called as a host plant, to lay the eggs, and the caterpillars eat that plant and they grow. So on the river bank, there are particular plants which grow only on the river bank. So they are adapted to the fluctuation of the water. So in summer season, the water level goes down, and in the rainy season, when floods, the river is full of water. So the trees are submerged about 10 to 15 feet, but still they are alive. They can they can get oxygen in this flood also. So there is a vines tree which is found on the river bank, and the butterfly associated is leopard butterfly. So this lay eggs on this vines tree, and we have found lot of leopard butterflies around these vines trees. Then there is a karam tree, which there is a 3 or 4 trees are there in our stretch, and the commander butterfly that lay eggs on this karam tree. Then there is tree called as Glycosmis pentaphylla, or in Marathi it is called as a kirmira. So this plant is also very important. It is found only on the river banks or on the streams, and there are a lot of these plants in our stretch, particularly on the Mula bank. So Mula have 2 banks. So one bank comes in PMC area, and other banks comes in the PCMC area. So PMC area, I have seen this Glycosmis in large numbers, and butterfly species, Mormon butterfly, so common Mormon and blue Mormon, they lay eggs on this plant. So common Mormon is we found in a large numbers, but we found blue Mormon also, and blue Mormon is our state butterfly. So these plants, or this riparian habitat, they provide host plants for this butterfly. And then some shrub species, next slide, like Haldi Kumku, which is a nectar plant also and host plant for tiger butterflies and crows. And every time we go, mostly we find the caterpillars of tiger butterfly on this plant. And this grows, so we can grow in the garden also, but they grow naturally in the riverine habitat. And one more plant is the chitrak, or it is called as a Plumbago xylanica. So this is also a riparian habitat, and we found a butterfly called zebra blue on this plant. So this connection is very important. So the different habitats in the river bank, along the river bank, they provide, so these habitats are used by different birds, and the different plants are used by these butterflies. So I think this habitat should remain intact, because there is a lot of changes are happening. So cities expanding, and as Pandey sir told that the different habitats are being created, like plastic and used clothes, and various habitats are being created. So it is very important to conserve these habitats. Once we conserve this habitat, this species will be conserved. So that's all.
Thank you so much, Monali, and I think you gave a very nice overview of wetlands, rocky outcrops, and also the concept of bioindicators, which in simple language means indicators of why one species or one shrub or one plant is required at that place, where we, from our human centric perspective, may not understand. And as Monali just said, that there's probably a butterfly who has a host plant there, which is why that shrub is required. And if you leave it to nature, it does everything on its own. We just have to, be a witness and see and learn from it. So thank you very much, Monali. There are some questions, but I think we'll get back to it after we finish Dr. Pankaj's session. I would like to now introduce Dr. Pankaj Kuparde. He's an evolutionary ecologist, currently working as an assistant professor with Department of Environmental Studies in MIT. His core expertise is in subjects such as urban ecology, conservation science, biodiversity informatics, to name just a few. He primarily works on owls and dragonflies, and I really liked the name of his lab, which is Chatur Ullu, Chatur for dragonflies and Ullu for owl. So Chatur Ullu Lab. He's a TEDx speaker, DST Young Scientist Awardee, and a Prakriti and Earth Watch Fellow. His work is featured in several newspapers and magazines, and has presented his work at University of Oxford in UK. I would call upon Dr. Pankaj to walk us through the biodiversity of the river on the riverbank, and also talk about the changing landscapes which we are seeing in Pune. So I think that will be a good way to take it forward from where Monali has left us. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you, Shubhaji. I will start sharing my screen. I hope the screen is visible. So,
Yes.
Dr. Pandey and Monalaji has already discussed a lot about Pune's river. So I wouldn't be talking about the basics, but I'll just show you the kind of work that is actually, giving us results with respect to dragonflies. So I'll be focusing more on dragonflies in today's talk. So just to start, we all know that there are, so many different insects out there. And one of the most fascinating groups, which I personally find, is dragonflies. People talk about butterflies, spiders, and all, but I guess very few people would talk about dragonflies. I would rather say when I show them this slide, any of the people, they would, recollect some memories from childhood, that we used to tie a knot to the dragonflies to fly it, like a kite. So many of us have done this, and that's how we have connected with insects and the ecosystems that they live in. So, peculiarly about dragonflies, these are all very beautiful flying insects, and they are one of the ancient group of insects. So, these were the insects which took to the flight for the first time 300 million years back, and then later on many other insects diversified. So that kind of evolutionary history is accumulated in these insects. They are very beautiful predatory insects. They eat on other insects. So they don't eat nectar. They don't feed on nectar or flowers or any herbs, but they feed on other insects, which is actually good because by that they control the population of other tiny insects like mosquitoes and a lot of agricultural pests. So that is one prominent ecosystem service that all these different dragonflies and damselflies they provide. As you can see in this collage, there are some dragonflies. So the insects which are sitting with their wings open, these are dragonflies, and the insects which are sitting with their wings closed, these are called as damselflies. So you can make out the differences, right? So both of them are under one single order called Odonata. That's why we generally refer to them as odonates, dragonflies and damselflies. So in Marathi, dragonflies are called as chatur because they're very fast. They can move very fast, so they're very agile as such. And damselflies are called as tachni because they look like a needle. So they are called as sui or tachni sometimes. So I will just briefly talk about what all things that have been, we have been studying in and around Pune, and this has been happening in multiple phases. So I began my career in, odonatology around 2010 and 11, and the first project, the first successful project I did was with the Pune city's different lakes that we have. So this was done in June 2012 to July 2013. So almost like a year-long project this was, and I visited multiple sites in Pune city. So Khadakwasla Reservoir, Pashan Lake, Mutha River, there are some places that have been mentioned. So this work overall accumulated a good amount of data, which was earlier not present for the city. So I recorded 44 species only from these 6 localities. And in this, I was also looking for how different habitat characteristics influence the species presence. So I was primarily looking at water quality and how does that influence the insects. So in that I found out that damselflies, so out of the dragonflies and damselflies together, if you look at, damselflies are more vulnerable to small slight changes happening to the habitat. So if the water is more polluted, you will not see many damselflies. Okay, so they are the ones which get affected most compared to the dragonfly. So that was a prominent result that we found. And this also means that if you have urban green and blue spaces and which are good as such, then you can expect more diversity of odonates. So this is just like one picture of violet striped blue dart. So this species was not recorded from Pune, and during this study we recorded it for the first time, and very commonly found across Mula River. So this is a species which is almost common everywhere, but not recorded earlier. So this we did in 2013, and then in the next phase, when we got some funding, we restarted this project. But here we asked a question about a urbanization gradient. So we were more interested in now looking at how the urbanization, concretization, all these things affect the presence of the dragonflies. So we took at Mula River because Mula has been like a source of inspiration, source of experimentation for a lot of people who work on biodiversity in Pune city. And we have got a very beautiful rivers. We have got very beautiful rivers around us. So Mula has been like really close to me because I have been staying around Mula. So I know the roots of the Mula and what it does. So here what we did was we went to Mulshi, which is the most clearest water you can get in Mula River, and then we sampled from Mulshi till Koregaon Park. Okay, so as you can see in the map, all the red area is the concrete or the urbanized area. Okay, and as you move towards Mulshi, you see more farmland, and then there is scrubland and all the green area is the forest area. So that is Tamini forest and all that. So we sampled at 6 different locations: Mulshi, Paud, Nande, Balewadi, Aund, and RT. Okay, and we sampled for the dragonflies in all these locations. So we were expecting that when you have, when you move to the urban areas, perhaps you see some different types of species. When you move to the forest areas, you will see some different types of species. So that was the expectation. And just to show you the pictures, so this is the part of Mulshi where we sampled. So you can clearly see that the water is clear. You can the floor is visible, and the vegetation is like pretty rich as such. If you come to Aund, then it is pretty polluted, turbid water. There's algal blooms, right? So you can clearly make out that the water quality is different in both these locations. And Aund comes in the urban area, whereas the Mulshi comes in the extreme non-urban area. So we repeated the transits over there. We did it multiple times, multiple visits. Almost for a year, we did this study, and the results were very striking. So these are the pictures from the field while we were doing this. So here we were earlier looking at the adult dragonflies. Okay, so the pictures that I showed you were all the flying ones, right? So those are the ones which are out, but there are the baby dragonflies which are underwater. Okay, and you don't see them easily, so you have to pick them up, like you have to swap the floor of the river. You have to take them in a tray, and then you have to sort them, and then only you can see them. So it means dragonflies are in the air as well as in the underwater. Earlier what we were doing was only in the air, right? But that may mean that we might be losing a lot of dragonflies which are as babies, underwater. So this time we incorporated that new technique, and we sampled all these areas. We sampled the floor of the river, for which my friend Dr. Prosenjit Don, he flew all the way from West Bengal to here because he is an expert on larval taxonomy of odonate. So with him, we did all this sampling, and as you can see in the picture, he has taken a scoop of the river floor, and now he's sorting. So when we put it on the tray, these are like pretty well curated kind of a sample you see. These are the tiny dragonfly babies. Okay, so these dragonflies will feed on different types of zooplankton, and eventually they will grow big. They will come out and they will develop into an adult flying dragonfly. Okay, so we did this to complement our sampling to understand what exactly we are missing, and the results are really striking. So I will spend some time here. As you can see that we were talking about urbanization. We went to Mulshi, to RTO, Koregaon Park, that area. So the urbanization intensifies from Mulshi to RTO. Okay. Now this is the panel of the dragonflies and damselflies that we saw all across, right? So there are some species that you see. So these are the damselflies, the blue ones, and the red ones are the dragonflies. So let's say one species like this first one, Disparonora quadrimaculata. In common vernacular language, it's called as black-winged bamboo-tail. So you can see the black wings, right? So these species are only found in Mauritius and Pod, and then later on they were never found, any of these areas. Okay. Secondly, if you look at the other second one, this is Libelago indica. It was seen in Mauritius but never seen in any other parts. However, there are some species which were commonly found all across, like the Pseudagrion rubriceps, so which is found all across. Then there is Brachythemis contaminata. It is found all across except Mauritius. So we found this very interesting pattern, and it clearly tells you that there are some species which respond to the urbanization, which respond to water quality changes, pollution, and they may disappear if this happens. Now, one more surprising thing I'll tell you, that if you look at the river of Mura, flowing from Mulshi to RTO, that entire stretch is only 50 kilometers. Okay, if you take a linear distance. However, the river would have curvilinear kind of a flow, but if you look at the linear distance, it's just 50 kilometer. So within 50 kilometer of spatial distance, we see species getting affected, and this is nothing but local extinction. Okay, so if you are visiting a place again and again for almost 10 to 12 times and not seeing a species there, it means that there is something wrong with the habitat which is not supporting that particular species, because it is seen just 50 kilometers ahead, right? So this paper has been published in Journal of Urban Ecology, and it was pretty well taken, because this is the first kind of study anyone has done on dragonflies and the wetland ecosystem, taking one single river and taking readings on it. But it clearly shows you that species are extremely vulnerable in the changing landscape of Pune city. And we have just taken Mula River, but if you go to Mutha River, things would be even drastically changing, because Muta is, I think, more vulnerable than Mura now. So these are the species which can be taken as habitat sensitive species, species which can be taken as ecological indicators. So their presence and absence will tell you whether the water is good or the habitat is good enough for them to survive and reproduce. Okay, so this was done way back in 2019, and this was published in 2020. So after that, post COVID, we again restarted our project, and we have been now involving a lot of citizens in all this documentation, because just researchers are not enough. We need a lot of people, to document the data. So citizens have been contributing quite a lot nowadays in all our sampling, and they come and they see the kind of river or the wetland habitat is there and kind of species they see, and they get excited, and then they want to do more. So we are doing some projects. I'll just mention it and then go forward and finish my talk here. So we have been working with the Marathwada region. We did this project as a part of Prakriti Fellowship, in which we involved a lot of citizens. And as we all know, Marathwada is pretty drought prone area. So in fact, documentation about wetland and the fauna of wetland is much needed there, because it's a very drought prone area. Same methods we are using in Pune as well, with the involvement of students and citizens. And this was as a part of Earthwatch fellowship that I had got. So we were looking at Mula River, Mutha River, some of the lakes that we have, Pashan Lake and ARI Lake, and so on. So we were documenting species over there. Now we have been tying up with WWF as well. I'll just go ahead and come back. Sorry. Okay, we have been tying up with the WWF India as well, and we have been sampling all across India at 30 different wetlands every year, and this is the third year of sampling. So we really need this kind of data to say anything about long-term, effects of change in the habitat. And there is one site which is on Mula River. It is in Vishal Nagar area, which we have been sampling from the last 2 years. Every month we have bi-weekly sampling. So every month, twice we sample for 4 months post monsoon. So we have very strong data about how in the last 2 years the species distribution and populations have changed. This is the third year. By January, this sampling will be over, and we will be taking that data and analyzing and writing it up. And that area has been marked for RFD. Okay, so very concrete, very much concrete data, but we don't know what is the future of the rivers that we have, the very beautiful rivers that we have. So the latest work that we have done is we dig up a lot of data from Pune city. We are sort of fortunate because there's a lot of biodiversity data available with our city. Okay, so Britishers did a lot of work in and around Pune city, so a lot of biodiversity data is available. So we dig up last 180 years of data. It contains historical data, published data, as well as citizen science contributed data. We have been collecting our own data from 2014, so it's almost 10 years of data that we have. So we are putting this together, and we have now compiled this entire thing, and we have 96 species recorded from the Pune district. Okay, primarily PMC, PCMC area and surrounding area. If you look at this 96, it is almost 72% of entire Maharashtra state Odonata fauna. So if you look at the kind of Odonata fauna only one single district has, and we are not even, we are just aging to Western Ghat. We are not into Western Ghat yet, right? We are still like on the border, and we are pretty much dry, district as such. Still, we have so much of fauna. In that PMC itself, only the PMC boundary, if you take up, has 60 plus species. So that's a tremendous amount of biodiversity of one particular order that we have, right? And RFD zones, only those 5 marked zones, they have 37 plus species. So even if you subset, it still has got a good potential of the species. And of course, the threats are pretty visible. If habitat changes, if concretization happens, water flow modifications, and water pollution, these are going to affect very strongly to these extremely habitat sensitive insects. So that is all I wanted to talk about, to put in these numbers in front of you. because this work is not yet published, so it's not in open, public domain yet. But eventually, it will be available. So dragonflies, we look at dragonflies, because we like to, work on them, but their habitats are pretty much right now vulnerable, especially in urban areas. And it's not just the case of Pune city; it's almost the case of every metro city in India. So if you look at the wetlands and water bodies, especially rivers in metro cities, they're extremely vulnerable to changes. I have been to different places. I have seen, riverfront projects. I went to Brisbane. I was there for some time. They have got a really beautiful riverfront, extremely beautiful. There's so much of entertainment. You can just sit and look around. You don't see any single dragonfly. You see all the generalist bird species, and it just going to a supermarket and buying the same stuff every year, every day. That is the kind of thing. You will never get the essence of nature if you convert the river into a canal. That is all I have to say. So I'll end my talk here, and we can now open the discussion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pankaj. I think it was a very beautiful and sensitive session that you took for us. And it's so amazing that such a small species can also tell you all that's happening, all the
Yeah.
changes that's happening around you. And just taking on the point that you spoke about the riverfront development, we have with us Samir Padhya, who's a principal scientist at Biologia Life Sciences. And I would request Samir to just give us a little overview about the environment impact assessment of the project, which will probably connect us to this whole issue of the riverfront that's going to affect all of us and all the species, plus all of us as Pune citizens.
Thank
Samir?
you. Hi. Thanks, everyone. First of all, very informative talks. Pankaj, it was really, really informative. So, so I won't take much time. So, the thing is, what PMC has come up with the EIA part. What we did with Jeevit Nadi was to actually assess in depth. Pardon? Has
Go ahead,
someone
go
any?
ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, someone got unmuted, I think.
Okay. So what we did was we did an in-depth study on actually checking what are the discrepancies, because looking at the EIA, we found that there are several discrepancies across taxa. So it was not that they had underestimated just one component of the biodiversity. They had underestimated taxa across all the groups. Secondly, what they did was they did not incorporate, as usual, most of the invertebrates or lower animals, like Pankaj's group, odonates. They don't have data for it. Yeah. Even with respect to a group like birds, yeah, with butterflies, fishes, they have severely underestimated the richness. So I'll just give you a brief overview about what we did. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
sir.
if you look at the EIA report, yeah, so this is with regards to plants. So I'll just touch upon the plants part and the birds part. So if you look at the EIA species richness that the survey claims to document, the total number of species is 46. Yeah, which will tell you, even without a thorough research, that this is an underestimate. Yeah, this is underrepresentation. But what Jeevit Nadi's team did with thorough sampling, thorough observations for multiple years, they found 316 species. So there is no comparison between what EIA has given and what Jeevit Nadi members have found there. Yeah. And it is across these different types of habits. So it's not as if they have not documented a particular type of plant. Yeah, this is across groups. And this is really shameful on their part, that they have completely ignored even common species of certain plants. Yeah, they have not documented them. This basically implies that they have not done on-ground studies. Yeah, a popular concept of taking a shortcut is to randomly collect 2 or 3 papers and simply list out the species that are there in those papers, and then they just reproduce it saying that it was their own work. Yeah, and this is evident with whatever we are finding. So if you look at this, you see that at least there are 10 times, 9 to 10 times more species on the same stretch, mind you. Okay, so this is the same 44-kilometer stretch that the RFD aims to develop. Yeah, and certain species which are dominant, yeah, so herbs which are dominant species found along the rivers, they don't find a mention at all in the EIA. So this is very strange, that how can this happen? Yeah, but this is evident and it's there in the EIA report for anyone to read. Okay, so this was one observation. The second observation characteristically that we found was with respect to birds. So with birds, Kedar, is Kedar around? So Kedar Safekar helped us with coming up with the documentation, verification of all the species that were there. So these are, by the way, I'm just going through the report. These are all the species of plants that Jeevit Nadi has documented. Yeah, and this is available for anyone who wants to get it for his or her own work. Yeah. So from birds, what we found out was EIA report, okay, mentions 332 bird species for Pune. Yeah, and this report was specifically for Mulamut. Yeah, and they list only 12 species. Yeah, 12 species of birds from the entire study region. Now, how is that possible? Just 12 species we can count. I am not an ornithologist, but I can count more species of birds than 12. And this is what their number is. Jeevit Nadi, with their casual observations, mind you. So this was not a thorough study like they did for flora. With casual observations, they could find 77 species. Okay, 77 and 12. Though this is already 6 times more than the EIA report. And what Kedar helped us out with is he used this online database called eBird. Many of you must be knowing it. And using this eBird, he found that there are 131 additional species in that project area, which the EIA has completely ignored. So if you look at the total numbers, it's like 17 times more bird species are available. And let's say, for instance, of the 131, we can say, let's eliminate the 31 for accidental observation. Even then, 100 more species. Yeah, so there is no comparison. This basically tells you how lazy these EIA consultants were in ignoring even the commonly occurring fauna there. And this is again with respect to only birds and plants. We have not even touched upon any of the lower animals or even fishes for that matter. So they talk about fishes, give some 9 to 10 species that are found there. And the latest report that is available for Mulamutha lists 63 species of fishes. Even with increasing pollution, if we say half of them are gone, it still means there are about 30 species that are still there in our rivers. And EIA report, PMC's EIA report lists only 9. And they are all with nomenclatural errors. So I'm not even going in or discussing about the errors that are there in the list. This is simply differences in species numbers. So all this basically tells that they are lying through their teeth as far as the biodiversity goes. They have not compiled data for mammals, for amphibians, and for reptiles. They don't have data for. So even higher animals, they have ignored. So what we want to emphasize is, and we are compiling more information with regards to the fauna now. So especially with amphibians and reptiles, we have experts who will be helping us out to document whatever is found there. Also mammals. So we are planning hopefully to come out with a good, thorough, holistic list of plants and animals that are found on the Mulamutha River stretch. Yeah. So this was just a brief highlight of what PMC has done and what is the actual ground reality. And this data, mind you, except the fishes is latest. Yeah, they are not old data. Yeah. So this was about it. If you have any questions, I will be happy to address them.
Scary and really sad, the situation. And I think more the need arises where we as common citizen need to understand the importance of these issues and come together, because again, as Dr. Pandey said, it's not enough if just a few organizations talk about this, or few people. It has to, become like a movement. And that's precisely, I think, what Pune River Revival is trying to do. And through these series of Know Your Rivers, because from a layman's perspective, this is not part of his life, but it needs to get there. It needs to get known, and as much as we can propagate it, each one of us would really need to do that. I would also like to tell you that there is Adivas is another organization which is doing a heritage tree mapping, which is like Pankaj said, it's a citizen science movement that anyone can go ahead and map a heritage tree. So we can do that even for heritage trees very specific to the riverbank. We'll have someone, yeah, Shlok has put the information out there on the chat. Whoever is interested, please, you can join. It's a very simple exercise, and there are people who can even train you on that, but please go ahead and join this movement. I would now request Shatakshi to please open up the question and answer session. Yeah, hi Shatakshi.
Hello. So the first question is for Monali. Are there any invasive or exotic plants on the Ramura confluence, or the forest is mostly natural?
Yeah, forest is mostly natural, but now some invasive plants are growing. So Ranmari is one of the plant is growing along the road side. So where there is access, so it is growing over there. And other species we are founding in last 2 years is Mexican marigold, which is growing there. So these are the two species, the invasive species, which are growing on the river bank. So not river bank, along the road side, but other forest is natural. And these exotic species are because of the movement of vehicles. So a lot of dumping is going over there. So they might be because of this vehicular movement.
Have you seen this lately, Monali? Has this happened in the last couple of years more so?
Yeah. This is I'm seeing in last 4 to 5 years, and the Mexican marigold I'm seeing in last 2 years. So otherwise, there were no exotic species or the invasive species.
Okay. Thank you, Manali. The next question is, I think all the panelists can take this. The person had asked, how do we all together sensitize the government departments and wake them up about the situation on the river banks, and what should or should not be done over there? So, Pankaj sir, would you like to start with the response? Then the others can chime in.
Yeah, so as Dr. Padhe and Dr. Pandey mentioned that, first of all, collection of data, having concrete, solid evidence about what we are claiming needs to be done. Fortunately, there is some data now, but yet it's not in public domain. So we need to make sure that there is scientifically peer-reviewed data which is available in public domain, which can be used as an evidence. And then later on, perhaps we can build up a strong case against the changes to be made across the riverfront. So this is one of the suggestions, but of course a lot of citizens can come together, and stakeholders need to also agree upon you know uh, regarding the natural resources they have, the ecosystem services they are going to derive out of it, or they are deriving right now. So that has to be also analyzed. So sociologists, anthropologists, these kind of people should also get involved in these kind of studies, not just biodiversity experts. So all sorts of people from all strata should come together, and then I think we'll have solid some evidence to, to put together, to collaborate with.
Thank you, Pankaj sir. Samir sir, would you like to add to that?
No, I think Pankaj has already covered most of it.
Okay, great. I saw you nodding in agreement. Thank you. Monali ma'am.
Yeah, so we have to create a public pressure on government. So I think that will help to understand the government that people are also concerned about the this thing. So people should come together and they should uh, put a pressure on the government.
Right. Yes. Yes. So through the Pune River Revival campaign and movement, we are trying to get that to happen.
Yeah.
Hopefully, with all the scientific data, we can push the case even stronger. There was a related question. Has an attempt already been made to pass on this kind of information and the gravity of the situation to the forest department? I think this came while Dr. Pankaj, you were talking about Odonata. If you know of any information that has already reached the authorities and how they have responded, maybe you could comment on that.
So the papers have been communicated with them with some short summary of what are the findings. But so far, I mean, it was not even acknowledged or not received any data or any feedback as such. But in other parts where I have worked, not in Pune city, there has been a good feedback from the forest officials. So I don't know what is the case with Pune city or but elsewhere they are appreciating this kind of data and it's supporting their cause, and they are really acknowledging it.
Right, right. That's interesting that considering Pune is such a vibrant city and there are so many education institutions here, there's still no response for that. Hopefully, again, coming back to the public pressure part, that might get things.
So one more thing I would just like to add here, which is slightly like off the topic, but as you mentioned, academic institutes, we have some good colleges and institutes around in and around Pune, and there are a lot of students who are working on master's level dissertation, and they have worked on Mula River, Mutha River, and different parts in city. But all this data is just sitting in the thesis, dissertation projects, which is sitting in library. It's never published, but it's a perhaps a valuable data. Someone can dig it up and can just put it together to look at. If we have data even from last 10 years, 20 years, we can still look at how the changes have happened. And we all know that city is expanding, it's going to expand. There are some areas which have been extremely getting populated and extremely developing very fast, like the Baner, Balewadi, these kind of areas, Injawadi and all. In the last 10, 20 years, they have expanded really fast, that you can even see from the satellite images. So we have all this data available, but it just unorganized and sitting in places which are not accessible to anyone. So this is also a very strong evidence that can be like put together.
Absolutely. Yes. So going to the next question, it was related to the environment impact of the project that is coming up. Shailaja Tai was asking if the habitat is turned into a manicured landscape, how will the existing biodiversity survive, or will it survive? So either of you, any of you could respond to that.
Yeah, so the effect is twofold. So what happens is, first you modify the habitats. It also decreases the number of micro habitats or micro environments that are present in any stretch of river. That basically decreases the native diversity. So that is the one effect. Secondly, what happens is, this situation creates an opportunity for some invasive species to completely dominate the diversity there. And the best example to give is your hyacinth. It has spread everywhere, and it completely destroys the native vegetation wherever it basically dominates the aquatic vegetation. So it's twofold decrease or twofold impact on the biodiversity.
Yeah.
Manali ma'am, Pankaj sir, will either of you like to add to that?
Yeah, Monali ma'am, if you want to add something.
No, I agree to this. So we are seeing that the invasive species are increasing because of change in habitat. So that is also there, and habitats are decreasing, and once the habitats are decreased or habitat is removed due to the manicure landscape, the diversity of a fauna which depends on that habitat, so it decreases. So it's a association. So whenever we change, so maybe other diversity will come over that. So whatever trees are planted or whatever the manicure landscape is done, so other diversity may increase, but the original diversity, which is important, which is there for a long time or many years of evolution, or which is adapted to that environment, that diversity will decrease.
Just to add one point,
Yeah.
small point, anyone who is interested in knowing more about this should read up about this concept called as biotic homogenization. I'll just write it in the chat box. So it's a very pertinent concept currently in with respect to urbanization, and it's rampant in every urban center that you see. So it's not an India-centric problem. You see the same situation in all urban areas throughout the world. Yeah, so I'll just please do read about it. And there is a lot of literature now available, even general articles for people.
Thank you, Manali ma'am, Sameer sir. Pankaj sir, would you like to add anything more to this part?
No, I guess they have covered all the concepts.
Okay, I'll take this opportunity also to invite everyone present at the present right now to visit the stretches that Jeevat Nadi has adopted. One is the Ramuna confluence, which has a very rich natural habitat still, which Manali Tai and Shubha were also talking about, and also the other stretches at Sinhagad Road and near Aund. All of them have an amazing riverfront, natural, some parts of a natural riverfront still that you can observe and learn about before any changes are done. We'll share the links of those of all these stretches in the chat box in a bit. And if there are any other questions, you could put them in the chat box or in the chat window. And in the meantime, if the panelists have any other comments they would like to add, since the questions are over for the time being.
So I want to,
yeah.
someone have asked, so what is the effect of RDF on this diversity? So the section which I have shown, in the RDF, that total section is going to alter. And each, the section of the river, so there are mud flats, there are slopes on the river bank, and there is a forest. So all these slopes are going to alter, and they are cutting the trees on the bank. So the trees like the Vayuns tree or the Parjambul, they grow on the bank only. So if they cut these trees and they plant at the higher level, they are not going to survive. So whatever diversity, which is the riparian diversity, floral diversity, that is going to disturb. And then the association with that floral diversity is going to disturb, and all the habitats are going to disturb. So the birds, so especially the waders need the mud flats, the birds which wade in the mud flats. So when the mud flats are gone, these birds are gone. And this we have observed in Pashan Lake. So previously a lot of waders used to come there, but once that the shallow mud flats, they are converted into vertical walls, the habitat is gone and the bird diversity is gone. So I think similarly going to happen due to the riverfront development project.
Right. Yes, absolutely. It's going to be a disaster in many, many ways. We've reached the end of our questions now. If there are still any more questions, you can drop them in the chat box. I think we are at the end of the session time also. Shlok will be sharing the different links that you can use to join the campaign or look at all the activities that are being done in the chat box. Please follow those links, their social media links and the website also. And I'll hand it over to Shubha to make the concluding remarks.
Thank you, Shatakshi. And yes, everyone's welcome to join us at the Adopt a Stretch initiative of Jivit Nadi. That is our first step. Like I said, it was a transformation for me. So it's a first step to get to know the rivers that you are having in your urban scenario. So please join us. It's a fun-filled 1 hour on a Saturday, Sunday. Pick up, choose whichever stretch is closest to you, and just join us. I would just like to end with our next month's programs. We'll be celebrating India River Week in the month of November. That's the last week of November. And as part of that, we will be having a book reading event of Nadishta, which is written by Mr. Manoj Burgaonkar. This will be done on the Mutha Bank at Vithalwadi Stretch, one of our stretches, oldest stretches. It will be on 19th November in the morning. Please follow our social media to get to know more about it. India River Forum is this time bringing India River Week to Pune. So there are a lot of other organizations also which will be celebrating the India River Week, which will be from the 25th to the 27th of November. And in addition to that, Jivit Nadi will be inaugurating 2 more walks at our stretches. So please be tuned to our social media and get updated. And please do join us. And I would like to thank everyone, all the panelists, and all the members for this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Man.